Hi, folks. We are, at least most of the Debian community team. It's good to talk to folks. I hope people are having a good DebConf. We want to go through a short agenda. We'd like to introduce ourselves. Wow, we have a much bigger team than we did this time last year when there were 3 of us talking at DebConf in Brazil. We'd like to see what people think we do. We'll then explain what we've actually done maybe in the last year. We have some places where we'd like to talk through how other people might do it, with an example or two of things we've done, just to give people an idea on how we work. And, well, let's have a conversation. We'd love to see people joining in and asking questions via Jitsi. If you want to join in on that, please ask the video folks or ask one of us, and we'll share the link so you can join in as well. Okay, so quick introduction. We've been around for a number of years, but at the moment we have 7 members of the team. I'm Steve McIntyre. I've been around in Debian basically since forever. I hope I'm still useful. People assure me that I am. I joined the community team before it was the community team about 18 months ago, and I've been trying to help encourage more people to join. Moving on, Molly.
Hi, I'm Molly. I've been on the community team since the fall of, I think, 2018, and then I took a break, and now I'm back. And that's all that's relevant for this conversation, I guess. Been around Debian for a few years now.
Andy, do you want to go next? You're on mute. Okay, microphone trouble.
There we go. Hopefully you can hear me now. I'm Andy. I joined the team just over 16 months ago. I haven't really been active for the last 9 of them. Things are changing work-life balance-wise, so I should be getting back involved again. Next.
Okay, Luke. Is muted.
Sorry, I toggled video instead of audio. In any case, hi, I'm Luke. I joined the community team, I guess, about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. Feels like longer. And I am been Debian for about 10 years, and I'm also an FP master. That's it.
Thank you. Next, Jean-Philippe.
Yeah, so I'm Jean-Philippe. I've been a Debian developer since 2018. No, 19, sorry, I say 19. And I joined the community team at the beginning of the 2020 year, so this year. And so far I worked in Debian about the translation activities that I go on doing very much, and also as an accessibility member of the accessibility team related to tests and other stuff like this. And maybe to finish my introduction, I will say some different things, saying that I'm very happy with hearing the voices of all the members of the team, because it's not something we do often, so it's very cool. And also, so thanks to the DebConf, and also thanks to the video team for the capture.
Okay, Sruthi, you're next.
So yeah, I am the youngest member of the team. Like, I joined the community team just like
Oh, you're very quiet. Sorry, can you speak up a little?
1 second. Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, that's much better. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm Shruthi. I think I'm the youngest member of community team. I joined community team just like a couple of months back, and I became a DD in like May 2019. So yeah, that's it.
Member of our team who we were all hoping would be here as well. I guess he's got technical problems or something. Is Pierre-Elliott Bécue. Hopefully he'll join us shortly. So that's the team. As you can see, we have a nice group of 7. I'll say it's much grown since the 3 that were around when I joined. I said when we spoke about the community team last year at DebConf. We are always looking for more members of the team. We want to try and cover as much of the diverse background of people within Debian as we possibly can. We like to have a good range of voices and opinions to make sure that we actually are covering, you know, all of those voices and opinions that might be in Debian. You know, we're genuinely trying to be to provide a good cross section here. So, I think Jean-Philippe was up next, talking about what do you think we do?
Yeah. Sorry. Go.
Go
on. I need to speak.
So in this section, we wanted to kind of have a conversation with people. Since there aren't a lot of people in the room, feel free to just speak freely about what the community thinks the community team does and should be doing. There's this idea in design where you ask people what a piece of technology should do. And that's what it should do, and that's how you should design it. So we'd like to hear a little bit about just like what people think the community team should be doing and what we are doing and how we're doing.
Okay, so I try to start, right?
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, because I'm afraid I didn't understand. So, well, the thing that we can try to say to show how what we do and how we try to do is to do a kind of a summary about what we did during this year. This year the team had well two kind of activities, so 3 kinds of activity. The first one is of course the team building, because it was a very important year for us to have the members with us. We are now 7, but it wasn't without efforts, so we are very happy with this new situation. And this new team, because most of the previous team were somewhat exhausted or was not here. Fortunately, there was some persons, so they helped us to build relying on a hard basis. We had to find some better tools to work together efficiently in a collaborative mode, but also getting a track of the activity. And also we worked on the delegation by the DPL, which takes some time, of course, to define our exact responsibilities and our role in the community. About the tasks themselves, I would say that there were 2 kinds of activities. The first one is to introduce the team. We did that during mini DebConf at the end of May, and also on external events, that is GUADEC, so the GNOME annual meeting. And also we tried to address various requests we received. What I would like to say personally, and others will say how they see this, is that the difficult part of the community team role is that first we only advise. So of course we have never the end power decision that is expected, and it's a good thing in regard of the other teams. And the other thing is that when we address a request, our response needs a lot of care, not to hurt the reporter or the targets. In each case, we should expect some hard feedback, some difficult feedback, either from the reporter or from the target. And it's something that we need to deal as a team. So it's very important for us to be a team, and it's also the reason for which we need to recruit, to avoid the burnout of the individuals, and also to support each other to prepare the potential turnover related to the difficulty of the activity. And our task is mainly based on the mediation. The purpose is to struggle against the isolation that we can feel when we are a developer and in a difficult situation, and supporting. But of course, the area is not so easy, because when doing that, also of course there are some teams, and it's not always easy to maintain the quiet atmosphere in the teams. To talk about the main tasks we did this year, I would say we have we addressed about 25 requests, and we received about 25 requests, and we could address about 15 among them. The others weren't easy to address, and some of them are yet opened, and we are addressing them. The main part of the action, where the origin of the action is a report from a member of the community about a message which is aggressive. It's not so much a big problem for us when it's a message on the mailing list internal of Debian, because it's a team problem management, and so in such circumstances we easily can explain to the people how we think the thread may be more constructive and quiet and more welcoming for new contributors, and to be sure that we don't say that persons that our atmosphere is not welcoming. The same thing happens on Bugzilla, where we needed to give advice to the package maintainers or the bug reporters, so that the community stays welcoming, and the dialogue to stay positive and constructive. We also, and it's so in our responsibility, so it's not the most difficult situation, even if, as I said earlier, the job itself is not easy. We had some mediation tasks beyond the mailing list, because, well, it's probably the most difficult in our responsibilities, but our purpose is to support the reporter, but not blaming the targets, or understanding the situation without blaming the reporter or blaming the targets, because it's important to be sure that no one feels humiliated by overreaction. And that's not easy, of course, because it depends on a lot of criteria related to the each person, the culture, and the other features. And that we had to do that in many cases. So it's a very interesting job, but also it's of course somewhat difficult. And the last thing I can mention about that is that we were requested to moderate the users' mailing list in Debian, it's more difficult for us to do that because in such circumstances we have to take action somewhat different. That is, remember for end users a code of conduct, but be aware that the code of conduct is not necessarily known by any people in the users community. It's rather known in the Debian contributors community instead of the users community. So we have to do this remind. And also we try to de-escalating the thread so that, of course, we maintain a welcoming community with respect between people and a capability to have a constructive dialogue. So, well, our year was for us the first one, which enabled also to the new ones, just like me or some other people, to learn what we can do, how we can do, and don't forget, of course, we are volunteers, so we are not professional of the mediation, and the different topics about training, about Debian supporting training for the community team. It's an idea we could discuss, because, well, we are not professional, but we had to address that. And that's the reason for which it's so important to have a team and a relevant team, just like we have the diversity team, because just like I said, the problem is that the reaction of people depends on many things, and so it's very important. As much as we are diverse, as much as we are chance to not hurt someone and to be sure to respect it. So it's personally the kind of balance I propose about this first year in the community team. That's it for me.
Luke, you're muted.
And I guess going off of that, like an example of like what the importance of the team recruiting more diverse members. Like if we get, say, somebody asking us, "Hey, is this this content in this Debian package unacceptable?" And it's like, I don't know, it's some Nazi symbol. Like we can definitely say, yes, that's offensive, that's inappropriate. But if it's say something that's not something that we have experience with, we are just not really aware of like the cultural context. That's where I think we can kind of struggle, and so having more people with different experiences from different cultures would be extremely helpful. That's all I had to say.
I would add to that that we also have a lot of differences of opinion. So I think the idea of like offensive messaging or offensive imagery when it's a cultural conversation is a really useful example, because it's not just us knowing what's like offensive to, like, say in Germany versus what's offensive in Sri Lanka, but also like having people's opinions on whether or not they're offended by it or would they be offended by it, because it's hard to decide whether or not something is inappropriate if you have no experience with it or if you're not tied to like the group being attacked.
Yeah, precisely that. It's like we can do research and see that like it has been talked about in certain places, but like it's hard to like turn that into, well, in this context is this specific thing problematic. So yeah.
Sure. So as with that as a background, let's open it up for discussion a little. We'd like to go through, you know, an example, a case study, and see how other people would deal with, you know, with you know, a fictional example that might be very close to one or two that we've had to deal with. Molly, do you want to talk through this?
Sure. So it's in the Etherpad. There's a link to that in the notes or the chat. I will read it. It is quick. Alice and Bob are both Debian developers. They have a technical disagreement and begin to assault one another. Their relationship permanently sours, and every few months they attack each other on public mailing lists. Every time this happens, they report each other to the community team, as do other people. So, there we have two people who don't get along. They just don't get along anymore at this point. And their relationship has definitely reached a point where it impacts the rest of the project and how other people see the Debian project because their fights are in public. So I would like to hear more about what people think the right thing to do in a situation like this is. And either people who are on the community team or people who aren't on the community team should feel welcome to speak up. I'll kick it off by saying that to me, it seems like the first step in any situation like this is to reach out to the people involved and ask them what they think about, but also like what they would want to have happen. And when you do that, maybe you're lucky and if people have very concrete things that they want and those are achievable, that's something that you can make happen. But I think a lot of the time what people want when they have an ongoing problem with one another, is not easily fixable. And it's not the kind of thing that you can just say, okay, well, just talk it out. Or you need to be polite to each other and stop insulting each other in public.
So do we have anybody who's not on the community team who is prepared to volunteer what they would consider doing or what they would like to see happen in that situation?
Hi everyone, I'm Christy. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear the whole example, so I'm trying to read it over the Etherpad. So it might take to me a few minutes to read it.
No worries.
While Christy's reading that, I guess the first thing to recognise is there is no right or wrong answer to this. There may be many wrong ways to do it, but there is no fixed right answer.
I think that sums up most of what we do, which is that there are wrong answers, but there aren't frequently right answers.
And sometimes there is no right answer.
Hi, so I'm back. I read it. I think that in a situation like this, I think it would be best if one moderator would suggest for both of them to take some time off until they cool down, or at least probably to not they shouldn't write for some time. So until the situation gets a little bit let's say cooler, I think that then they would be ready to retalk with each other and probably come back with other ideas. But I think that the best would be to leave some time off without writing in the mailing list. I think that it is a task that I would happily leave it on the hands of the moderators that probably are selected by the community.
So are you proposing they shouldn't post a mailing list at all, or is this more like an interaction ban? So I used to be on English Wikipedia's arbitration committee, and like often what we would do is we would say, okay, you two can't play nice together, so you are like the two of you are not allowed to be involved in like the same discussion, or like you're not allowed to like reply to the other person. I worry about imposing that on Debian mailing lists, but it's basically the idea is like it's nicer than a full ban, and because it's like a very large encyclopedia to write, you can just easily avoid whatever articles other people are writing on. But in Debian, I worry that like the more targeted interaction ban would exclude people too much, given that we just don't have a lot of different important discussions. But at the same time, like I think like don't post to the lists at all is pretty harsh. It's basically like excommunicating both parties from technical discussion.
I would suggest to like stop like those people to stop like talking for that specific topic. And I know that probably may be a little bit harsh to like, stop people from, writing and talking. But I think that for the benefit of everyone, it would be better if they could take some time off and maybe come back with cooler, and better ideas.
So like basically like a topic ban, like as in the specific thing that you have a dispute about.
Yeah. For example, if they're fighting over something technical, it would be best if they could, stop talking about that, or being forbidden to write on that topic.
Right. If you're getting into like an argument with people about System D, and like both parties are not engaging constructively on that. Okay, that makes sense. You just you're a topic ban from System D. Makes sense.
I'm also interested in this idea of saying to people that you just can't respond to each other on, say, Debian private or Debian project. I think there are plenty of ways around that, but I wonder what it would look like to tell people that they just can't talk directly to one another.
I think we've seen that in recent history, where what happens is one of the parties that feels aggrieved suddenly starts popping up with multiple different mailing lists as different identities. So it's quite a hard one to limit.
Well, in that case, we're talking about like actual like abuse. Like I don't.
I believe that's the scenario we're talking about on the pad. It's got past the technical issue in our hypothetical scenario, and they're beginning to attack each other in public mailing lists. So we're not dealing with at this point we're not dealing with a technical discussion anymore. They're beginning to insult one another, and it's spilling into public.
Yeah, I mean, I think like if you're talking about different identities and like using subterfuge to astroturf or whatever, then like that's clearly like whoever's doing that, like that's not, they shouldn't be in the project.
Yeah.
But I think like a lot of we have a lot of issues like this where people don't escalate to things that are inappropriate in that degree, where they're just using their own identities continuously sniping at each other. Because they have a beef over something that, like in this case, is technical in nature. So yeah, like we need to do more aggressive things when people fall off the reservation, and we do. But like fortunately, like most of that's not even handled. Like that's not community team at this point. That's list master or like moderation. Because like our goal, right, is to help people who are in the community work better. If you're like making sock puppets and that sort of thing, you're outside of the Debian community.
Sure. So it's a reasonable suggestion that Christy had of a way to help people before they get to that extreme position. Yeah. And it's the kind of thing that we've suggested to people. So yeah, that's a, that's a good way to go. Thank you. Does anybody else have any ideas on things that we could do there?
If we're ready to move on to another topic, I actually have another question I'd like to kind of pose to the group.
Sure, go ahead.
So let's say we have a Debian developer. We'll name, I don't remember Eve. Eve is another one of the names, right? Yeah, Eve. So we have Eve, the developer, who in Debian is very polite to everyone and doesn't do anything wrong. But Eve's Twitter account is just a disaster and attacks people outside of Debian all the time and is super offensive and is transphobic and homophobic and racist and sexist and like all the bad things that we don't like and that we think makes an unwelcoming community. So what's Debian's role in interacting with Eve and with Eve's presence in the community?
And of course, that is a really, really difficult one to answer. Which, of course, is why you're asking this question. You know, how far should Debian be worried about people's interactions that from people not entirely within Debian communication fora? If people are spamming the mailing list with hate, it's a fairly obvious, clear-cut case. If they're shouting at people on IRC all the time and being, as you say, homophobic, racist, whatever, it's a very, very easy call. It is much more difficult to deal with, to deal with the question, should we be policing people's activities when it is not obviously directly on Debian forums?
I actually have no idea here. So.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I was about to say, so within the team, we're quite split over this as well. It's not an easy question to answer. Should we be warning people that their actions outside of the visible Debian community are making people uncomfortable, or should we totally rein ourselves in and say that's not in Debian, therefore we have to pretend we didn't see it? It's a difficult call, and different people have very different ideas about this.
Molly, sorry, in this hypothetical, is this person expressing these views just about people? Sorry, just like in general, like saying that these are things like this, they're just saying like homophobic, transphobic, or racist things or whatever on their blog or what, and it's not being published into Debian, and they're not talking about Debian developers or the wider free software community. Like if someone was just saying that like someone just was saying that like they agree with J.K. Rowling that trans women aren't women, like, and they were just posting that sort of stuff, or is it here like they are in non-Debian channels actually discussing specific people in Debian or the wider free software community?
Let's say they're not talking about anyone specifically within the Debian or free software community. And this is one of those things where I think it's like really important to also note that there are lots of times when we all have I have a very strong opinion and visceral reaction to like this idea and this example. But what I like personally think is maybe different than what I think. Like if I talk through to myself what I think the team should do or what I think the like Debian should do are different, because to be very candid, like working with someone like that would just make me uncomfortable and I would not be into it and I would not want to like touch their work. But do I think that that's a stance that the team should be taking? Is like, I don't know.
There are a couple of comments on IRC.
So if I can come back to the question that's been asked whilst we read the IRC comments. A lot of it to me is down to how that person is presenting themselves outside of the Debian community. If they're presenting themselves as a voice of Debian, an ambassador for Debian, and these are an opinion that they are publicly saying, this is my belief. Oh, and by the way, I'm representing Debian in this, and this. Not necessarily overlapping in those, but if in the same forum that they are being abusive or definitely outside of the code of conduct, and in that forum they are trying to pass themselves off or represent themselves as wearing a Debian hat in some description, absolutely we need to intervene. It becomes harder when they are trying to keep, if you like, separate images of themselves where they have no overlap of their Debian hat into the particular form. I believe you used the example of a Twitter account. If there is never any mention of Debian in that Twitter account, how do we respond to them there, other than saying, is this, getting a confirmation out of that individual that yes, that is them, and saying, look, we are aware of this. What do you want to do about it? And sort of put the question back onto them of what do they think they should be doing about it.
Yeah. I spy a Rhonda has joined us.
Yes, about the issue of people saying hateful stuff outside of Debian. It clearly is a difficult situation, and I agree that it's hard. The community team or people can't be required to monitor such things, but I think that's out of the question anyway. When the question is mostly about when reports about such thing come in, and I think if people are representing opinions outside the project that they hold, which are against the community that we want to have within the Debian project, I think that's something that we still to some degree need to address, even if it's not directly presented on Debian services. Because it has, obviously, it is in the mind of those people, and it has an impact on how those affected by these hateful commands, the minorities and discriminated against people, feel safe within the community.
So it's in this kind of a situation, it is worth, in my opinion, talking to the people involved and asking them how they think it might affect others in the community. If you are touting hate against certain groups, how would people from those groups be willing to interact with them within Debian and the free software community? It's a conversation to have. The difficulty, of course, is if the person involved doesn't understand that there might be a problem, what do we do then? Wanda?
Yeah, it's very important that you raise the concern about asking the people that are affected by what was said or written there to check in with them what they need to feel comfortable, or what they need to sort of say, okay, we sort of can live with that, or I just don't want to interact with that person at all, but it's fine if they are in the community as a whole. So checking in with the affected people, what's their need to feel comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Didier, you raised your hand.
Yeah. I think an important point here is also to not forget that we are a self-built community, and we're not a community that, by definition, that will accept everyone. And I think it's still important to accept that we are choosing who we want to do this project with. And I think to some extent, at some point, there are limits to who and which types of individuals we want to welcome. And someone who touts racist things outside of Debian, out on non-Debian stuff, might someday join a DebConf with a racist tattoo. And what do we do about that? So it's a very hard line to draw, but at some point we might want to say, well, we don't want to work with racists, and it's more important for us to do a free software operating system without racists than to allow everyone.
Yeah. Andy, you had your hand. You're muted.
You
Andy.
are muted.
Muted. Sorry, my apologies. I was trying to say yes. I hear very much what Rhonda was saying and what Didi was saying. We've got an issue potentially also of jurisdiction. We've got what we can see and control inside our own environments, inside our own community. But we have no authority outside of that community. So in that particular media space where the person is being hateful, other than joining as a member and calling them on it, there is very little we can do in that space. Molly, I think you were next.
Yeah. So I have a sub question off of this now, which is like, are we only responsible for people within the Debian project? Are we responsible for everyone who might want to be a Debian user someday, or everyone we hope would be a Debian user? Like let's say there's some particular demographic that we just don't have any current Debian community members in. Secretly there are vampires, so there is a vampire, and then there is someone who is a vampire hater on the internet. Should we ban them or like handle them in the same way we would handle someone insulting like people who we know are part, like demographics that we know are already part of the community?
Now, I've just been prodded that we are kind of running out of time here. So I think we have time for maybe one more question, but it'll have to be really quick. We have a fellow Debianite. Who appears to be muted.
Sorry, I was trying to set up my name and I couldn't.
Hey.
So switching from the stream to the Jitsi, and I don't know what happened with the link. So basically, I was coming to raise an issue that was in the AFC channel. Based on that, of the discussion that was going on about people saying things on Twitter or whatever, the point I was making on IRC is that I think the main question to ask is whether Debian cares about how the people feel inside the community, and like somebody was saying just a minute ago whether Debian wants to have racists in its ranks or not, or it's more important to accept everybody. And I think that's the question that Debian needs to answer. And that will inform the decisions on how to handle it. I know I don't want to be in a project where there are people that hate me, wish to see me dead or not there, no matter what, no matter where do they say that, no matter anything. I don't want to be sharing a space with other people. Yeah, I think that's the main issue. And I think it's pointless to try to solve this problem thinking whether the code of conduct applies or not, or technicalities like that, when the question to answer is more profound, I think.
Sure, that's a fair point. Thank you. We don't really have time to go any further than that, I'm afraid. Thank you for people jumping in and asking questions and responding to some of our questions. It's been a really useful conversation. All I will say is, you know where to contact us, community@debian.org. Please, we're always looking for more volunteers if you think you can help, if you have good ideas on how to help with the work and making Debian a more welcoming community. We hope to hear from you soon. Thanks, everybody. And for the sake of the video team, we'll stop there. Cheers.